Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Hurdle. I am a urban planner consulting. I am very lucky to be the principal of my own small shop called Sean Hurdle and Associates, and I get to do a lot of cool stuff, and this is one of them. And joining me, and you'll be introduced to them shortly, is a great firm called Process, who's helping me in leading the consultation for the draft 2021 regional official plan. Just in case you're wondering if you're at the right meeting, we're here for the 2021 draft regional official plan, or RIWOP, just in case anybody wants to add any terms to their acronym dictionary. Many of you know that planners love their acronyms, and we're going to try to keep those at a minimum today. So I want to thank you all for being here. We're about 74. There's Peter again in the chat. He said, do you mean 2022? That's a really great question. I know our Director of Planning, Senator Melsick, will address that. But it is a draft 2021 official plan, because that's, I guess, the official planning year in which the planning horizon starts. And I know Sandra is going to get into that. Sometimes it can be confusing. But the good news is a lot of people who know much more than me are here tonight. So stay tuned, Peter. This is, as you'll notice in the slide, and I trust you all can see that, is that this is the live, second public open house number 2. This is the second time that we are here, and I think we have many returning friends to join us here, so thank you for coming back. The last time we met was January 25th, and a lot has changed since then. One thing I'll note, I did a little Googling. I went on the internet machine. It's an amazing place. And the temperature on January 25th, when we first met, was -7 Celsius. Today in Newmarket, it is 28 Celsius. So maybe there's some engineering friends or mathematicians in the audience, but I think that's about a 35 degree centigrade change in temperature. I don't know, anybody can correct my math in the chat, but I think that's what I worked out. So not just the weather, but a lot has changed. Several months, many completed surveys, a lot of emails, some focus groups, a lot of correspondence with regional staff and the consultation team. And also, you know, the provincial election was quite a ways off in January, and now it's on our doorstep, and a municipal election to follow. So a lot of things are changing and continuing to change, and staff are going to update you on a lot of the sort of external circumstances that are impacting the final version of the YROP, of the regional official plan, that's going to be recommended for council. So not just the weather has changed. We're going to explain to you what we did, what we heard, what we've done to you or proposed to do with your feedback, and how we can keep the discussion going, because we certainly don't want this to end with the final decision on the regional official plan. We don't want to, you know, the next time we see you, we'll be at the next one in 4 years. It's certainly no way to reward all of the attention and time that you've given us. So we're going to give you some ideas for how that can continue. And please make use of the chat down below, where I'll be handing the presentation off now to my friend and colleague, Nadia Galati from Process, and she'll take you through what to expect today and how to become and stay involved. I don't know whose phone that is, but I don't think it's mine. Maybe it is. That'd be really embarrassing if it was, wouldn't it? And I'll be in the chat, and I'll see you in about 40 slides from now. Thanks very much, everyone.
Hi, folks. Thanks, Sean, for starting us out. And again, my name is Nadia Galati. I'm a strategist, an engagement specialist based in Toronto. And Sean mentioned I run a shop, an engagement research and planning studio called Process. And together with Sean, we've been supporting York Region, the official plan review team, with the final stage of public consultation for the official plan review. And again, just to reiterate what Sean said, I really appreciate and want to thank each of you for taking time to participate in this meeting. To officially begin, I want to start the meeting with a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are often said in shared physical spaces, yet today we're gathering virtually, but we are all each still on land. So it's really important to acknowledge land and the land we're on. I acknowledge the land of York Region today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Chippewas of Georgina Island and the Mississaugas of the Credit, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that York Region is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa First Nations. It is important for us to individually and collectively reflect on land and consider our roles in truth and reconciliation. Personally speaking, I'm a settler. And as a settler on this land, I'm committed to being an ally in the journey towards reconciliation. So this for me involves sincerely facing truths about a horrific past, as well as contending with continued systemic racism that exists today to work towards a more equitable future. And as a planner and an engagement practitioner working in planning processes, I need to acknowledge the roots and impacts of systemic racism, and most specifically, anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism, as well as other forms of discrimination that are embedded within our systems. And personally, I need to work towards unlearning, rebuilding, and including more equitable ways of engaging disadvantaged folks, communities in planning processes and the processes I engage with. So thanks for listening to my personal land acknowledgement. And I encourage other settlers to consider and reflect on the land that you are each on and how each settler can contribute to truth and reconciliation. So just to begin, a big thank you again and welcome to the meeting. We really do appreciate our numbers are rising, as Sean was saying, with nice weather. That's a good formula. So many thanks for being here. And just want to take a moment to review our overall intentions and goals for our time together this evening. For those of you who don't already know, we want to introduce you to the York Region project team. So you get a chance to know who has done a lot of work on the regional official plan review. And we, of course, want to share information on the official plan process, including everything that's happened, the process to date to gather feedback that has informed the draft region official plan, and what that feedback was. What did we hear during the engagement timeframe for the project, and what changes were proposed for the draft region official plan. Here we have the plan, so we're also here to answer questions that you have about it and share next steps and opportunities to stay involved. So with that, how are we going to spend our time together? So quickly, our plan today is we want to, of course, welcome you, introduce the team, and we've developed a project presentation to share with everyone tonight that includes the 2021 draft official plan, a recap about it, as mentioned, a process about the public engagement process, what we heard, and the proposed changes. And again, what's next? And following the project presentation, before we close off for the evening, we'll have a general question, comment, and answer period, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions tonight as possible. So just quickly, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Sean mentioned, we have pressed record on this meeting, pressed record to capture this meeting this evening, and reason being, not everyone can be here for a variety of reasons. So I want to make sure folks have a chance to learn, just as you all in the virtual room. So as mentioned, no one will be recorded. It's just my face right now and the deck and whoever is speaking. So it really is anonymous with respect to capturing the content. Anyone who is joined by phone, thank you. And in case anyone does need to switch to phone, we've got some details and we're going to drop these in the chat. There's a specific number here up on the screen, 647-558-0588, and a meeting number. We'll drop those details into the chat just in case anyone on computer does experience any issues and has to switch. With this room of this virtual room of this scale, it can be hard to accommodate any interjections with respect to questions, but we do have that question and answer period. So please do hold any questions to that period, but don't feel like you have to lose them. Drop them in the chat and we'll be collecting and getting to as many of them as possible during that period. And I think other housekeeping note, there's a closed captioning option. So you can close the closed captioning option by selecting closed captioning at the bottom of your Zoom window. And finally, we are in the background taking a whole bunch of meeting notes, and we'll be essentially creating a summary of this experience this evening. So expect that as a part of the package with the video of the recording. So next up, we just want to share a little bit about the project team and introduce to everyone who's here. So up on the screen is an overview of the York Region Official Plan team. So the project is being led by planning leaders Sandra Malsick, the Director of Long Range Planning, in close partnership with Paul Bottomley, who's the Manager of Policy Research and Forecasting for the region, and Teresa Klein, who's the Manager of Policy and Environment. So all three are here this evening, and Sandra, we'll be hearing from Sandra shortly, and is going to take us through the details of the official plan, and others are here to answer any specific questions that might come up. And as mentioned, consultation efforts for this final stage are managed by Sean Hurdle of Sean Hurdle Associates, Urban Planners, and myself, Nadia Galati, and the team at Process, who've been looking forward to this evening and connecting with you, and of course, supporting the region in its project's final consultation work. So next up, we've had a chance to give you a sense of who we are. We'd love to get a sense of who's in the room and who's joining us this evening. So we've put together a short anonymous poll that's going to pop up on your screens. So if you're joining by the Zoom app, apologies to those who are joining on the phone. It's only Zoom, only on computer. It's going to be a series of 4 short, simple questions, going to take like 10 seconds that are going to appear up on your screen. So are folks starting to see that? Just trying to see. I can't see right now, so I'm just trying to see if we have launched. Sean, Emma, can you just let me know? No, it's not up yet. Okay, here it is. It just has come up. So, we want to get a sense of where folks are coming from. Let us know, what best describes you. Are you a resident of a specific municipality, perhaps a member of the development industry or a business owner? Let us know. Another question we have is, your tenure as a community member. How long have you been a part of the York Region community? And maybe what city or town do you live, work, or spend time in? So just trying to get a sense of who's in the room, and if you maybe came and participated and shared some time with us in January. That's another one of our questions. So just going to spend an extra, just a moment here, 40 more seconds or so. Thank you. So we have over 50% of folks who've participated in the poll. So lots of York Region residents. Okay, one moment. We'll just see the results in one moment. Okay, so here we have, so most folks, 55% of folks are York Region residents. About 20% of folks are here representing a public agency or a community group. We've got about 15% of our folks so far are members of the development industry. How long have folks been a community member of York Region? Over almost 50% of you have been a community member for over 20 years. Next up is for over 10 years, about 20% of you, and then about another 20% between 1 to 5 years. We've got lots of folks joining us from Markham, Newmarket, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, as well as Stouffville, Aurora. Many thanks for everyone. And it actually is about great. So this is not about 2/3 of the room. This is not your first time participating, and the other third, it's your first time. So this is great. Many thanks, everybody. We appreciate getting a sense of who's in the room, and appreciate that this is many of you not your first time. So appreciate the continued involvement in the process. So thanks for being with us. So next slide. Wonderful. At this point, I'm going to hand us over to Sandra Malsick, who's going to walk us through some details of the draft official plan.
Remember to unmute myself. So thank you very much, Sean and Nadia, for that great introduction, for welcome everybody to the virtual room. I thank very much to our participants for taking the time to attend today. I know with the weather what it is, it's probably a little bit difficult to do so, so I do appreciate you doing so. I also appreciate the contributions that a number of you have made throughout the process, because I know a number of you have been quite involved with us. So again, thank you very much on behalf of all of us. I haven't been able to monitor the chat given everything else going on my screens, but I will acknowledge Peter's question about the 2021. So we are here tonight to summarize what we've heard as a result of consulting on that 2021 draft regional official plan. And we will be using the input we have gathered to date to propose a final 2022 plan for Council to consider for adoption next month. So I will start with a recap of the process that we've been in for those that may not be as familiar. So for those of you that did participate in the January public open house, we provided a brief explanation of what an official plan is. In short, it's a long-term plan for how the region will accommodate future growth for residents and businesses. Through this update, the Regional Official Plan, I'll try to avoid the acronyms, the Regional Official Plan will address growth of approximately 800,000 people and over 300,000 jobs. And that's what the region is forecasted to grow by the province. The plan provides direction and policies that guide economic, environmental, and community planning decisions, so where to grow and what to protect. This is only the third regional official plan for York Region, the first being in 1994, the second being the current plan, which was approved in 2010. The region's plan is required to conform with provincial land use planning policies and plans, many of which have been updated since the 2010 plan was approved. So this new official plan is being updated to conform with this new provincial direction. As mentioned, we're here today to discuss feedback received on the draft that was released in November of last year, including that received through the public house open house in January that some of you attended. We also discussed the nature of changes being recommended as a result of that feedback. So moving into the process. This slide provides a summary of how we've consulted on the draft official plan. It's important to remember that there was also considerable proactive consultation to inform development of the draft. This included public opportunities to discuss or comment on growth management, employment conversions, the agricultural system, major transit station areas, and more. So this very intensive 6 months of consultation was not the start, but rather an opportunity to gather input on draft policies that were generated following significant proactive consultation. As I've already mentioned, we held the open house in January as one of the key steps to launch the consultation on the draft. We also posted the January public open house information for the month of February to function as an ongoing virtual public open house to allow additional people to have self-guided participation, and they were provided with the same opportunity to ask questions of staff or provide comments. Lived experience knowledge has been gained through focus group sessions, and we also posted a survey to gather general input. Partner and landowner feedback was extensive, with one-on-one meetings with local municipalities, landowners in response to submissions, as well as interested residents. The Have Your Say website was also key in receiving input by email and the Ask a Planner form. Consultation events were promoted using a variety of methods as outlined on the screen. Specifically, we've used social media, e-newsletters, york.ca. We had a YouTube video, York Region Matters, which is distributed to all York Region residents, and newspaper notices. We also had a local radio advertisement for the session. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what we heard. Response to the draft official plan has been significant. We received over 1,100 comments on the draft regional official plan through more than 150 submissions since its release in November 2021. The top 3 chapters, for those that have dove into the plan, the top 3 chapters we received comments on in order of number of comments were Chapter 2, which is the foundation for complete communities. So see where the interest is there. Also Chapter 4, an urbanizing region, as well as Chapter 3, which is the sustainable natural environment section. So that's where we received most of our comments. One of the ways that we gathered comments was through the official plan survey. This survey ran from November of last year to March of this year and contained policy directions for the 8 topics on the screen as they were proposed in the draft ROP from November. And we posed the question, are we headed in the right direction? The survey had 280 responses. 93% of them identified as being York Region residents with an age ranging from 18 to over 75. More details about the survey and responses can be found as part of a report for next week, which I'll discuss more shortly, and as part of the next steps section of the presentation. So on the screen, strongly agree and agree are represented in the blue portion of the bars, and disagree and strongly disagree are in orange. As displayed by the graph, the most supported policy directions were around natural environment and employment area planning, both at a 73% positive support. The least supported was housing at 57% of respondents, either agreeing or strongly agreeing with the policy directions. And this is reflective of the feedback we've heard on housing, both through the first open house and through the focus groups and virtually all of our consultation. I'll talk more about that. The topic of affordable housing for all York Region residents, given the diverse backgrounds, they're in different stages of life, and they're looking for a variety of housing options, different sizes, different number of bedrooms. They're looking for different tenure opportunities, owned and rented. So it is a topic we're hearing a lot about. So I am pleased to confirm that addressing the housing challenge does not stop here. We have initiated an affordable private market housing implementation plan, which will take a deeper dive into the region's housing challenges and propose advocacy, partnership, tools, and actions to help address some of those affordability challenges. In line with the survey results, key areas of interest expressed by the public through the open house and submissions included housing affordability, balancing intensification with urban expansion, and we also heard concerns over proposed provincial highways. Continued protection of natural and agricultural lands was also key, as was climate change, the latter relating to almost every aspect of how and where we grow. This slide summarizes what we heard from our focus groups, which involved speaking with traditionally underrepresented groups, including youth, seniors, the Black community, and those representing LGBTQ2+ regional residents. You will definitely see commonalities among all groups that we consulted. So here again, housing affordability is front and center, as are natural environment protection and impacts of a changing climate. These groups also spoke about making transit more accessible and aligning it with affordable housing options. Understandably, they also noted the importance of the region ensuring equitable engagement processes and relationship building to increase participation in regional projects. As can be expected, a good proportion of comments received were from our local municipal partners. Local municipalities will be key to successful implementation of the official plan. As a result, they are very engaged in our process as they're looking to ensure policies work with the local context so that we can realize the communities we're collectively trying to achieve. This slide summarizes their key areas of interest, which are consistent with what we've heard from others. They are interested in strong phasing policies to manage growth. In addition to ensuring financial sustainability, sound phasing of growth also keeps agricultural land in production longer and ensures that communities have the services and amenities they need before moving on to the next area of growth. These concerns were echoed by community members. The intensification hierarchy sets the stage for where the most dense developments should occur. Ensuring that the local context is a key consideration when applying the hierarchy was important to local municipalities. We agree, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've done in that regard through a later slide. Local municipal perspective on the almost unanimous concern about housing affordability was to request that the region play a key role in assessing and developing tools to help them reach the targets of the plan. Development of an updated official plan has provided an opportunity to learn from Indigenous communities and to build stronger relationships. Their main areas of interest are on the screen. With their assistance and knowledge, they're seeking protection of archaeological and cultural heritage resources. It's also essential to acknowledge their history, as Nadia pointed out so nicely, and ongoing rights and stewardship of the land, as is protecting natural resources that are so vitally important to all of us. A number of landowners also made submissions, generally requesting that the plan include a different designation for their lands, or that overlays be modified as they pertain to their lands, generally in the areas as noted on the slide. I'll provide a few examples of these requests and the recommendations in response to them later in the presentation. Make sure I didn't skip a slide there. So these are a few quotes from the survey that help demonstrate some considerations of our team when proposing revisions in response to the comments received. The housing quote, the top, reinforces the need for additional work to meet our targets, which we've committed to undertake. The growth management quote shows that while many support minimizing outward expansion of growth into rural and agricultural areas, other people are concerned about the level of intensification and the evolution of the region's centers into significantly higher density urban form, our future cities. The transportation quote is an example of a situation that is pretty common in planning, and that is comments or requests that are at odds with each other, demonstrating how we need to strive for a balance. The final quote on employment areas has stretched our thinking on how we plan our employment areas and make them more inviting components of our communities. In summary, we can't please everyone, but comments generally support the policy directions that are the basis of the draft plan, including planning for a mix and range of housing, capitalizing on development that makes use of existing infrastructure, and phasing growth to manage the delivery of new infrastructure in a way that's financially sustainable. We also want to ensure that our communities are inclusive and pedestrian friendly. Over the next few slides, I will discuss from a fairly general perspective changes that are being proposed as a result of the consultations and feedback received. I will take this time to mention, I've alluded to a bit of a meeting next week, so I will take this time to mention that tomorrow on York Region's Minutes and Agendas page, a report will be posted to support a statutory meeting on the draft regional official plan that will take place next Thursday, May 19th, at a special meeting of Committee of the Whole. The report being posted tomorrow will include more detail on how comments were addressed and will include a link to a track changes version of the November draft ROP, just the text portion, that reflects the changes that are being recommended as a result of the feedback we've received. So Sean will talk a little bit more about that meeting as part of the next steps after my presentation is concluded. Before I summarize key areas of change, I wanted to speak a bit about the main categories comments fell into with respect to their impact on the proposed updated draft ROP. Most changes made in response to comments involve editing policy content to improve clarity and ease of implementation. So we really appreciate those that reviewed the policies in detail and identified areas of potential concern, misinterpretation, etc. Other changes include adding or modifying supplemental information, examples being sidebar or preamble text, also with the intent to clarify and assist with implementation. A number of changes are not resulting in a number of comments are not resulting in recommended changes. The primary reasons being that the change would be inconsistent with either council direction or provincial policy, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. As mentioned, many comments were based on a very thoughtful and comprehensive review of the plan and input, an example being thorough scrutiny of policies to manage growth. I'll start with the phasing policies. As a result of comments received, we're recommending moving away from the achievement of regional targets as a criteria to phase growth, as it would have unintended negative consequences. Rather, phasing is now proposed to be based on the achievement of local targets. This allows the timing of growth in a specific municipality to be informed by their growth history and success based on local context, market, and services available to support new residents. We're also proposing to avoid leapfrogging of development by recommending modifications to the policies that would require new areas growth be contiguous with existing areas. With respect to housing, we've redefined missing middle and have expanded on housing forms to increase choice and hopefully affordability. We've also identified locations for gentle density and indicate that all rapid transit corridors, either existing or planned, are planned for higher densities. While there was strong support for the intensification hierarchy, there was concern that it needed to be applied in a local context, to which we agree. We are proposing additional content to clarify that the hierarchy must be respected within a municipality, but not necessarily between local municipalities. As an example, the regional center in Newmarket should be a higher density than a regional corridor in Newmarket, but not necessarily higher than a regional corridor in Vaughan. And that's how we look to have the hierarchy applied, is really specific to the local municipality. So sidebar text has been added to clarify this interpretation. Finally, employment policy modifications are proposed to clarify that conversions take place through a regional municipal comprehensive review for those regionally designated, but can occur at the local level for other employment areas subject to regional approval. In order to protect our natural and agricultural areas, additional policy direction is being proposed to ensure that the placement of fill is outside of key natural heritage and hydrologic features. Also, the role of conservation authorities as key partners has been clarified. Policies have been added to ensure adequate buffering between urban areas and agricultural areas, and this is to be achieved through edge planning within the urban area. Finally, with the assistance of agricultural experts and partners and the Agriculture and Agri-Food Advisory Committee of Council, we have improved language in the plan to reinforce the role of rural areas in the agricultural system and propose to expand the use of agricultural impact assessments. As a result of discussions with focus groups, the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and feedback from Indigenous communities, we've revised policies to ensure engagement efforts include diverse communities within York Region. We're also recognizing the role of volunteers and the need for diverse recreation and business spaces reflective of the needs of our diverse communities. Planning for connected, comfortable, safe, and accessible pedestrian and cycling facilities is also included in the plan. As a result of Indigenous engagement, an update to the land acknowledgement included in the official plan is proposed. Other changes include recognizing the role of Indigenous communities in the planning process. Not surprisingly, as I've already mentioned, some comments did not result in recommended changes from the November draft. We're proposing to maintain the current wording. the majority of which fall into categories noted on the screen. As has been mentioned throughout the process, the region's plan must conform to provincial plans. So comments that would result in a misalignment with provincial policy cannot be supported. In addition to council direction on employment areas, urban expansion, and major transit station areas, council was apprised of key directions being undertaken in the updated draft official plan. Requests that were inconsistent with this direction did not result in a recommended change. Other comments not addressed included those that were out of scope for the region, most notably matters governed by local municipalities and requests that required additional analysis and planning intended to occur following adoption of the updated official plan. Most notable in that latter category being additional work to address private market housing affordability. I will note, however, that all comments received are being summarized and provided to council, who has the authority to provide direction to staff to make changes they deem appropriate. The summary of comments and how they were addressed is also provided to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, who is responsible for approving with modifications, or denying approval of our plan. Mapping changes proposed are minimal, the majority being municipal requests for refinement, recognizing approved minister's zoning orders, and technical corrections largely brought to our attention from those who graciously took the time to thoroughly review the draft maps. So very much appreciate that. Updated mapping will be provided through the June report, not the May report that you'll see live on the agenda tomorrow. But the May report will indicate whether a request for a mapping change was supported or not, and that'll be done through an attachment to the report. In the following slides, I'll go through examples of the types of site-specific landowner requests we received and considerations that informed our recommendations. So this first slide shows an example of a request for a major transit station area modification. So the lands in red are major transit station areas as proposed through the draft in November. We did have a number of requests to be added to a major transit station area. So in general, we are recommending minor refinements that are contiguous with an existing major transit station area and that also are supported by the local municipality. So in this example, the purple area is well removed from the existing proposed MTSA boundaries, so it would not be recommended for inclusion in the MTSA. This next slide is an example of the agricultural requests. So these are requests to be changed from an agricultural designation to a rural designation. After extensive assessment and I will say considerable discussion, staff are proposing to maintain the agricultural rural mapping as contained within the draft plan, with one minor exception to recognize some existing municipal services up in Georgina. And that is a result of all of the ones that we assessed did result in introducing a hole in an otherwise relatively contiguous agricultural area. And doing so is counter to both provincial guidance and the systems approach as described in provincial policy and implemented through our plan. This slide shows the nature of some of the requests we received with respect to natural heritage system and feature boundary modification requests. So we did make one methodology change into how we identified the regional Greenland system. So the draft in November included privately owned major open space. And in some instances that included private golf courses. So we did refine the layer to exclude those. That was sort of an inadvertent catch. So you will see modifications to the policy in that regard, or sorry, the mapping in that regard. And the example on the screen is an existing golf course. But what we didn't do is refine layers based on site-specific information. And the reason for not doing so is that the maps are based on best available data, and the policies are written in such a way that they can be refined through planning applications as well as local planning processes. And we feel that's the more appropriate time to do so when you have the local context and you have the right players at the table reviewing the information. So there's no changes proposed in that area. The final one here, oh, not quite the final one. This is an example of an employment conversion request. So for those that are not familiar with it, we are now required to designate employment areas in the regional official plan. That's the first time we've been required to do so. So what a conversion request is policies prevent residential uses and other incompatible uses in employment areas. So a conversion request is a request to be redesignated as community area, which would allow for those more permissive uses, including residential uses. So we did receive a number of these. We are proposing again to maintain the mapping as brought forward in the draft ROP. And the reason for that is there was a very extensive process leading up to council's decision, which happened in late 2020, that involved interaction with the public and public consultation, et cetera, over a number of months. So given that comprehensive process and council's pretty clear direction in that regard, we are proposing to maintain the mapping as identified in the fall draft. And just for those that haven't been as involved, part of the reason for that and such an early deadline is employment conversions affect how we manage growth, whether there's going to be people living there or jobs offered there. It impacts the land needs assessment, et cetera. So we really needed a significant lead time to do a comprehensive assessment and make recommendations to council, and they have made their decision in that regard. So this is the final example of site-specific requests, and it's a request for urban expansion. So comparable to requests for conversions, requests to be included in the urban area were also generally not supported, given the extensive process of consultation that informed council's decision late last year on the growth management scenarios. The exceptions being some very minor filling in of gaps in East Gwillimbury and bringing in a farm in Whitchurch Stouffville, which I'm going to explain a little bit on the next slide, as well as a couple of very small removals that are actually close to the farm. It's almost a bit of an offset there. So with that, before I speak to the content on this slide, I will just take the opportunity to talk about the farm that I was just mentioning. So I apologize for the scale of the map. It's probably not the most clear to see, but there is a new community area in this area just west of the community of Stouffville that crosses the boundary into the city of Markham. In that area, a number of ministers' zoning orders have been issued permitting urban uses. So those are now functionally urban areas based on the minister's decision. And it almost takes the entirety of that area. There was a farm, it's known as the Willow Grove Farm, that protrudes into this area, and it would have impeded good planning of this new community area to not bring it in, given the urban designation on the rest of the lands through the minister's orders. So, and then there are a few little small areas that are sort of fingers coming off of that same area that the city of Markham was concerned about bringing in, given the configuration of natural areas and other factors. So we are proposing to make those minor removals and the addition of the farm, and it's a little bit of an offset across the region there. Okay, so this finally, the matter on the slide here, these aren't within the region's jurisdiction, but I do recognize that they have been a fairly major of focus for the public during our consultation process. As such, I did want to provide an update. So in April, the provincial government announced minister's zoning orders for the bridge and high-tech transit-oriented communities along the Yonge North subway line. Well, it doesn't change the direction provided in the region's official plan. These orders will govern the nature of the development that's permitted in these areas. So it is now sort of in the province's hand through the orders that have been issued. So as has been mentioned, we're in the final stretch here. This is not your last chance to be involved. We will talk about the special meeting, statutory special meeting occurring next week. But in addition to that, there are a number of projects ongoing that will continue to inform how the region grows. They include some I've already mentioned, the Affordable Private Market Housing Implementation Plan. We also have all the local municipal plans that provide additional, more detailed directions. So the region is the approval authority for those plans. They will be occurring. A number of them are well underway. They're required to bring their plans into conformity with ours within a year. We're also in the final stages of approving hopefully getting council approval of a climate change action plan, as well as a community energy plan, which will follow. And the archaeological management plan we're looking to update as well. So I do encourage all of you to stay engaged. The other thing we will be doing is monitoring our achievement with respect to the new official plan and the targets in it, and reporting on a fairly regular basis. So with that, again, like January, for those of you that were here, I know it's a lot to digest. So I do thank you for your patience. That does conclude my portion of the presentation. And with that, I will hand it back to Sean.
Hi, everybody. Thank you again, Sandra. As one planner about another, trust me, the detail that Sandra just covered is very voluminous. And she made it look easy, but it's not. So you did a great job, Sandra. Thank you very, very much. And I hope you dream of anything but planning tonight. Okay, so what we're going to do, hi, you saw me 40 slides ago. Sorry, I'm back. For next steps, as Sandra was saying, we are very close to the quote unquote end of this process, but certainly not a process through which we would like to hear more from our residents and other participants in York Region. Details in a few seconds on that. So there is a statutory public meeting. I know that sounds very complicated, but essentially it's just fancy to say it's a legal public meeting required under the Planning Act. Because everything we're doing here is governed by the Planning Act. So that is to satisfy through a meeting of the Committee of the Whole, which is a function of Regional Council. We'll be hearing from regional staff on the complete final draft of the 2021 Regional Official Plan, and also a summary of all of the comments and all of the requested and recommended changes as outlined today. I want to just reaffirm that the Planning Act sets the minimum requirements for public consultation and analysis and many other steps that York Region and any decision-making municipality on land use matters is required to make. And they are, under the law, only required to provide one minimum of one open house and one statutory public meeting. So the region has already far exceeded the minimum statutory requirements by holding 2 open houses and a series of focus groups. And it's just the right thing to do. And it honors the interest of all of you here today. And I'm just glancing at the comments, just from my swimming in the comments, several dozen, all excellent questions, comments. So, you know, I think it honors the level of interest and the knowledge that York Region residents and other interested parties have. So thank you. On behalf of the region, thank you very much. And as a professional planner, it's wonderful to be engaged with people who are themselves engaged. So thank you. Next slide. So as I said, we really, while this is essentially the end, in a sense, of the public process for the Regional Official Plan, given that there will be a statutory public meeting next Thursday, and details will be put in the chat as to how to find that report, which is going to the Committee of the Whole in 1 week from today. We certainly want to continue the conversation, literally and figuratively. I think we've learned a lot through this process. And one of the lessons I think we've always suspected, but it's nice to get kind of confirmation that we have a very engaged citizenry here in York Region. So through york.ca/have your say, the link right in the right in the slide in front of you, that's where you will find a record of all of the conversations that we've had, and also through the email futureyork@york.ca below. Please continue to liaise with regional staff to ask questions. They want the conversation to continue, and there will be future studies and other initiatives led by this regional planning department that will certainly benefit from further feedback. So please stay tuned on that. So back to you, Sandra.